So my brilliant moment was when I took my daughter, who was then 14 years old, to an environment. We were invited to a birthday party in a supported living environment where some significantly disabled young women were living. And I explained to her on the way what it was all about, and we went inside. And as soon as we went inside, the first thing my daughter wanted to know was if she could speak to one of the carers. So I took her along to speak to one of the carers, and she immediately asked, "What do you do with these kids all day long?" I was pretty surprised, and I asked her why she was asking, and she said, "Because I want to know what I'm going to be doing when I'm older." And I was completely aghast, because my whole life I'd been dealing with her challenges, and I think the hardest part of having a child with special needs is when your hope is taken away at the point when the diagnosis is made, and life just turns in on you, and everything about the future disappears. And all of a sudden, it was like as if by magic, I suddenly realized that actually there was a future for this child, and it wasn't what I'd always believed, which was going to be living with me in my home and accessing institutionalized services, but that actually for her too, we could aspire to her living independently in the community and doing her own thing. And that was just inspirational, and what's driven me and is driving all our services forward today and achieving the most phenomenal results. My name's Bev Jacobson. I'm the Chief Executive of Kisharon. Kisharon is a charity that was set up 40 years ago, and its purpose is really to provide children and adults with learning difficulties with services which give them exactly the same opportunities as their mainstream peers, and allows them to develop, to grow as much independence as possible, and to live inclusively as contributors to communities. On occasion, I ride to work on a bike, and one of those days I came riding down the Golders Green High Street, and in quick succession I saw 3 young people that we support just doing everyday things. One young woman was walking along the road, clearly on the way somewhere. Another young man was waiting at a bus stop, and a third was coming out of a shop. And I knew then that we were achieving what we needed to do. The biggest challenge is actually the way in which disability is viewed by society, and it's changing that and trying to get people to buy into the vision that I have, where people are seen as equals and are given the chance to do things just as other people are in society. Sometimes it's people in the general public, and sometimes it's actually the families of people with disabilities themselves, who've, especially when they're a bit older and they've lived very institutionalized kind of lives, and you're trying to change that and say to them, you can actually aspire to more. And yeah, that's really challenging. I mean, you ask about brilliant moments, and actually every single minute of every day is a brilliant moment, because I think that it's the complexity of the relationship between the people being supported and those supporting, and it's the mutual learning that's going on, and the insights that people with learning disabilities often bring to the rest of the world, which are amazing and actually inform so much. The most exciting thing for me is when you see people grow and thrive and change the way they see themselves, and getting young people into work, seeing them coming dressed differently, standing taller, walking with more pride, catching buses independently. There can be nothing more rewarding than that.
My brilliant moment was when I first picked up a pen and paper again, after being encouraged to do so by my physios and OTs at Stanmore Hospital. I hadn't written for a long time, and I was encouraged to do so to help with the transition from becoming a professional dancer to becoming a wheelchair user. And they encouraged me to write a journal, to write down my experiences and my emotions. I was really sporty beforehand, so it ended up turning into a journal that detailed my sporting adventures, kind of finding new sports to try as a wheelchair user. And then I developed that into a blog, and which then encouraged me to go and study for my sports journalism MA at St Mary's University in Twickenham. My name is Gemma Louise Stevenson, and 2 years ago I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a rare genetic disorder which affects the makeup of collagen in your body, which means that my joints dislocate around 30 to 40 times a day, and I'm very, very, very hypermobile. I started life training to be a professional performer. I had loads of amazing experiences. I got to dance in the opening ceremony of the London 2012 Olympic Games, and I got to work for a couple of West End directors in regional productions, and I got to sing for 6 months in France. I faced lots of discrimination because I was also a coach. I was also a dance teacher and coach, and a lot of people in the area where I grew up and where I'd set up my dance school found it really hard to accept a wheelchair user as a dance teacher. I faced a lot of disability hate crime from local organisations and also people whose children I used to teach, who wrote to me telling me that I needed to understand my limitations as a disabled member of society, and who basically made my life a misery for 2 years. So I went into the hypermobility rehab at Stanmore Hospital for 3 weeks, met some amazing people and learnt how to cope and manage my pain and pace my day-to-day activities. And there, they encouraged me to start writing again. I'd always been a really avid writer when I was younger. I was a member of the Newsround press pack, and my first article for them I had published on CFAX was the review of the Mr. Bean movie, which shows you how long ago it was. And I'd always been into journalism and writing, whether it be stories or articles. And I just picked up the pen again. I didn't believe I could because my fingers dislocate a lot when I write, so as part of my condition. But I was encouraged, to take it slowly, to write slowly, and it would help me adjust to life as a wheelchair user. And from then, I came out of hospital and I decided to ring St Mary's University and ask if they would accept a wheelchair user on the sports journalism course. And I interviewed for the course and was luckily offered a place, but finance was a massive, massive barrier. As a dance teacher and fitness instructor, I was on quite a low income, so I was encouraged to speak to the NCTJ about the Journalism Diversity Fund, which can help aspiring journalists from underrepresented groups get into journalism. I was waiting at home and I was like, I haven't got it, I won't be able to go and train as a journalist. And I got the phone call about 10 days later, which told me that I'd received the bursary, which then meant I was wheeling around my house like a mad woman, really, really excited. And my mum took me out for a meal because she was so proud. I just haven't looked back since I started the course. This term alone, I've had the chance to go to the Wheelchair Tennis Masters and report from there every single day that it was on, meet tennis players who I've looked up to for so long. My one piece of advice to any wheelchair user or person with a disability would be, no matter what people tell you and no matter how they say you can and can't do something, use that to fight, because that's what I've done. If I could have quite easily sat back and said, this is what people expect me to be, this is what society expects me to be. But I used their negativity and turned it around to make a positive impact on my life. And right now I've never been happier, and I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile and making a positive impact on the media industry.
So my brilliant moment was explain to her on the way what it was all about, and we went inside. And as soon as we went inside, the first thing my daughter wanted to know was if she could speak to one of the carers. So I need to be doing when I'm older. And I was completely aghast because my whole life I'd been dealing with her challenges, and I think the hardest part of having a child with special needs is when I took my daughter, who was then 14 years old, to an environment. We were invited to a birthday party in a supported living environment where some significantly disabled young women were living. And I took her along to speak to one of the carers, and she immediately asked, "What do you do with these kids all day long?" I was pretty surprised, and I asked her why she was asking, and she said, "Because I want to know what I'm going